all art. That just a trash can.
It's just a trash can. Yeah.
Zack Snyder's Justice League. What a world we live in, where we can finally watch this movie 4 years after it was intended to be seen. At the time of Justice League's original release, November 16th, 2017, I was so excited to see Justice League for the first time. As I walked out of the theater opening weekend, I had actually liked the movie. That's right, 15-year-old Luke Filmboss actually walked out of the theater happy. But even though I enjoyed myself, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. This couldn't really be the movie that Snyder had intended to be DC's big ensemble movie. The first ever live-action Justice League movie should have been the DCEU's best movie. Instead, it turned out to be the worst. I had been following and knew about all the drama that went on behind the scenes of the production in Justice League, but I didn't know to what extent it had affected the final product of the film. The fake news that I was reading at the time said that the originally planned 3-hour Snyder version of Justice League hadn't yet been finished filming completely, and that Joss Whedon was just coming in to finish filming those unshot scenes and to do some minor reshoots. Looking back at those pathetic lies, I can't help but think, what was Warner Brothers thinking? Thank you, Zack Snyder, Warner Brothers, and HBO Max for allowing this movie to exist. Zack Snyder's Justice League is so much better. I know I'm in a minority and a very controversial group of people, but I actually loved Man of Steel and the Ultimate Edition of Batman vs. Superman, and even liked the theatrical version of Batman vs. Superman. And as someone who loved those movies, watching Zack Snyder's Justice League was one of, if not the most satisfying and just rewarding movie experiences of my entire life. I watched the 2017 version of Justice League the day before watching Zack Snyder's Justice League. With more storytelling and filmmaking experience than I did 4 years ago when I watched Justice League in theaters, I can honestly say that Justice League 2017 is a pretty bad movie. And although it has a so bad it's good vibe, I really don't enjoy watching it anymore. But you're not here to listen to me talk about the 2017 version. You're here to hear my opinions on Zack Snyder's Justice League. How good was it? It's one of DC's best. Most of the scenes in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I stress most of the scenes, were already seen in the 2017 version. But yet, we really didn't get to see those scenes in the 2017 version. Because there is so much extra footage that was just cut out, and I want to say ripped out, because the way it was taken out doesn't really make sense. But now we get to see each scene, with most of them at least being twice as long, with consistency, with more emotion, with more character development, more character interactions. Just every scene is just so much more powerful and meaningful. Like, we have good continuity. There's not just scenes being cut that we're just not seeing. The action, we can follow the action and understand why our characters are now in a certain spot. Whereas in the 2017 version, you would have so many cuts that you would have a character in one place and then they'd be in an entirely different place with different foes. You'd see Wonder Woman with a shield in one scene and then her without, or vice versa. It was so messy and just inconsistent in the 2017 version, and now seeing Zack Snyder's version of how he actually filmed these scenes, it's kind of amazing. And not just with the action sequences, just with every scene, whether it be scenes of dialogue, it's so different. And with the dialogue, some of Whedon's dialogue I actually thought some of it was okay. None of his stuff was great. The acting I thought was poor in his reshoots. But I did like some of his scenes. But in comparison to what they replaced out of Zack Snyder's version, it doesn't even come close. And, for example, this isn't really a spoiler, when Superman is resurrected and he's with Lois Lane at the farm, in Zack Snyder's version, Superman never spoke until he got to the farm. There was no "do you bleed" line. And so in Zack Snyder's version, the line that Lois Lane says when Superman first talks is, "You spoke." And Superman says, "Did I not before?" Which makes sense because he didn't speak before, but he's getting his memory back. And so now he's actually surprised that he never said anything. In Joss Whedon's version, he does a voice recording of Lois Lane's voice over Snyder's footage, and that's where we get the terribly embarrassing "you smell good" line, where Superman replies, "Did I not before?" It's mind-baffling how we stooped so low in 2017 with the version we got, that the lines of dialogue are that bad that they were voiced over, and we couldn't get anything better, anything more clever than "you smell good." Steppenwolf was so much better in this version. Not just his design, which was much better. He looks intimidating. He actually has some emotional expressions outside of an evil smirk that makes him look like some self-righteous smart aleck in the Whedon's version. But in this version, he actually has some emotion to his face, despite being a much creepier, intimidating version of Steppenwolf. And his design and his armor, everything is just so much cooler. Like, there's just little details like the fact that he has more than 5 fingers. It's just so much attention to detail, and like they try doing something that makes you remember him. He's not just some weird dude with some spike goatee who wears a suit of Viking armor. He actually has recognizable features that make him stand out. And while he's not the best DC villain, I don't even think he's the best DCEU villain. He's definitely no Heath Ledger or General Zod, Heath Ledger Joker I meant, or General Zod or Lex Luthor. He's still really good and almost great. And by comparison of his character to Loki, he's not as good of a character as Loki, which Loki just had a lot more time to develop. But comparing him to the Avengers version of Loki, which I thought was really good, he actually is better than Loki was in the Avengers. And that just is a good testimony to the fact that they actually gave him some good motivations in Justice League, and then they put the brawn, the intimidation, and actually some good lines of dialogue on top of the fact that he actually has some character in this movie. He has some reasons to do what he's doing, which in the 2017 version, we had like a few lines of dialogue that did mention his exile, but we never had a scene that actually devoted itself to like explaining what happened. And in this version, it is just a one-on-one conversation. We don't really get to see his exile, which I think would have been a little bit more compelling to see Darkseid like cast him out. But just the conversation he has with Rasai, or I forget what the other servant of Darkseid is that he speaks to about it. But yeah, we actually have some motivation, some actual character development for Steppenwolf, and it's good. Like I said, it's not great, but when you put his own evil personality along with some great action and just like a lot of intimidation, it balances out to where he's not only a really cool villain, he's actually a pretty good villain. Definitely no Thanos, and he is weaker than quite a few other comic book movie villains. He's definitely not one of the greatest villains of all time. But for a first villain in the first Justice League movie, he works very well. This movie also cares more about everyday, normal people more than Joss Whedon's version did. And it's able to do it while keeping the Justice League front and center. It doesn't take like a whole 20 minutes out of the movie to set up some random family that the Justice League will inevitably kind of have to save in such a lame way. But like, we followed this random Russian family in the 2017 version for no reason. I guess it was supposed to like connect you to the humanity of the story. But yet Justice League does that, and it connects the humanity not only with our characters, but even with the outside people, while still focusing on each individual member of the Justice League, not sidelining to some people for no reason. We see the people through our heroes, and it grows both our heroes and our perspective of the world that we are saving. It's so good, and I think this movie honestly does that better than almost, not every movie, but almost every other comic book movie that I've seen. To go further with the characters, the plot of the movie is the same, but the story is deeper. There's a lot of surprises that we see here that we didn't get with Joss Whedon's version. And also just the characters. The characters are the story. Without the characters, of course, almost any character... every story without character isn't really a story. Plot can be a main factor, but the character has to be the core. And Justice League has a very solid plot. It's not quite as strong as Infinity War, but it's very similar, but yet different in its own right. And it works just as well. It's almost as good in plot. And I'd say that the character, while the villain isn't as strong, I'd say the individual superhero characters are actually stronger than they have been in any Avengers movie. Without getting into spoilers, I just have to say there's so much character development, and some of our heroes get backstory. Some of their backstory is referenced, but we just get to see more into Aquaman, the Flash, and especially Cyborg. It's so fun to watch, and while we don't necessarily see why our heroes do what they do, although we do with some of them, I'd say Cyborg, we get some clear examples, but just like seeing their heroism, seeing that they do care, seeing how they react to people is just like satisfying to see. Like in Captain America the First Avenger, one of my complaints is that we don't really get to see why Captain America does what he does. He's simply a man doing what's right. And in Justice League, we get that, but there's a little bit more sense of urgency, and because I think we get closer to our characters in what they're doing, I think it's much stronger than how Captain America was built up, even though I'd say in his standalone films, after the first Avenger, Captain America did get some pretty good development. But in Justice League, it's just so meaningful. I don't think I've ever been connected to characters in a comic book superhero movie. I've never been connected to superhero characters this much outside of Spider-Man from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman in her 2 Wonder Woman movies. No other Marvel movie, no other DC movie has gotten me to care about the characters as much as this movie has. And the second half of this movie's third act is almost unrecognizable to the 2017 version. There is so many huge surprises that I cannot spoil because everybody watching the video would hate me. But I think that it's so satisfying and just amazing for fans of DC, fans of this universe, and even for casual moviegoers and movie watchers. The third act is just so great that, and so surprising, that I think it's almost undeniable to enjoy, even if you didn't like the first half of the movie. I'd say this last third act is extremely great, and especially the second half. I was mind blown. I loved it. It was really good. If this was a theatrically released movie, I think that there were a few scenes that could have been cut out or shortened to bring the runtime down to 3 hours. But honestly, because it's a 7-chapter streaming movie, I think that it's got the perfect time. Like, give us every ounce, every shot, every frame out of this movie. It's all worth seeing. If you're not a moviegoer who likes watching long movies, you can split this movie up, and because it's streaming, you can do that. And so I don't think that there's a problem with the runtime. I don't think that there should have been anything cut out of this movie. It is just good the way it is. I loved it so much. I am partial to longer movies. I love the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings movies. And I usually watch the director's cuts of any movies anyway. But with Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'd say there's only about 20 minutes that really should be taken out in order to make it a smooth watch. But I just love getting every single second of whatever visual glory he had intended for this film. And so for me, it's the perfect film. But I will say, if you're not that kind of person, there are some scenes that, if you know where to find them, you could probably skip over. I love comic book movies. I love both Marvel and DC characters and get invested in them. But just like I said, this is one of the movies that I got the most emotionally invested in the characters. It is great. I loved Zack Snyder's Justice League. It is among the best comic book movies of all time. It is definitely close to the best ensemble superhero movie of all time, second only to Infinity War, and only slightly below that film, I think mostly because its villain isn't quite as good as Thanos. There is a bit of a gap between them, and so that does put Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, a little bit below Infinity War. But overall, this is one of the most compelling, just fantastic cinematic experiences of my life. I think that everything gets paid off and set up very nicely. There is nothing that I think needs explained outside of what's going to happen in the future of these movies. And without spoiling it, I just need to share my opinions on that last apocalypse dream sequence. I thought that it was good. It's definitely one of those things that could be taken out and it wouldn't affect the movie. I understand why Zack Snyder shot this scene when he got the okay to make this film, because he didn't have a guarantee if he would be able to make his future films, so he wanted to give us a little taste of what he had in mind. And it's got some pretty great writing. I think that it's a little bit unnecessary, but because, like I said, it's a streaming movie and you just need to get as much out of this as you can, it was really enjoyable. The first time watching it, I thought some of the Joker scenes and his portrayal was a little bit cheesy. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. But when I watched it again, I actually was able to hear what the Joker was saying, because the first time I kind of missed some of what he said. But the second time, I actually liked it quite a bit. He's still not one of the best Jokers. His portrayal is just like a little snippet of what we might have gotten. And it's very similar to his portrayal in the Suicide Squad movie from 2016. But I like it. And like I said, the writing was very well done. So it's just a little bit of an extra bonus that we get. I think it would have worked better as like a 10-minute end credit scene. But as it is, having at the end of the movie, it works. And it's still very enjoyable. So yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League was a phenomenal achievement. I am so glad and even in awe that we even got this movie, that I'm kind of glad that we got the 2017 version of Justice League that at the time was able to give me some Justice League enjoyment, even though I now realize that it's a pretty bad movie. At the time, I was able to get enjoyment out of it, and that existence of the 2017 version allowed for Zack Snyder to be able to complete his full 3 hour and 40 minutes plus 10 minutes of additional scene into one big movie that we can enjoy, which we probably wouldn't have gotten if it hadn't been for the 2017 version of Justice League. We probably wouldn't have seen this film in its full glory, and I am glad we did. It is amazing. Sign up for HBO Max if you haven't. Watch this movie. It is well worth your time. Just sit down one evening, watch this movie, take breaks if you need to, but just go in with an open mind and savor every single moment. Even if you're not a big fan of this franchise, watch it till the end. And if you don't like it, that's fine. I personally loved it. I give Zack Snyder's Justice League a 96% in quality, a 97% in enjoyment, for an overall score of 96.5%. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help you be on the lookout for more videos from Luke Film Boss.